He wasn't supposed to be emperor. He was the fourth son, a spare, sent to the coldest, most dangerous corner of China to guard a border nobody else wanted. But while his rivals played politics in the palace, he was out there learning how to win wars. And when the moment came, he didn't hesitate. This is the story of Zhu Di, the prince who watched, waited, and then took everything. The middle of the 14th century. China was dying. The Mongol-led Yuan Dynasty, once the largest empire on earth, was rotting from the inside. Floods swallowed entire provinces. Famine spread faster than armies could march. Corruption had hollowed out the government. Bandits ruled the roads. And everywhere, desperate people were whispering the same thing. Heaven had withdrawn its blessing. In China, that phrase wasn't metaphor. It was a death sentence for a dynasty. And dynasties, like empires, don't die quietly. They die in fire and blood. All across the country, rebel armies rose. Warlords fought each other as much as they fought the Mongols. Cities fell. Cities burned. Out of that chaos crawled a man named Zhu Yuanzhang. He started with nothing, less than nothing. A peasant, an orphan, a wandering monk who begged to survive. A man who had watched his entire family starve while the Yuan Emperor feasted in his palace. That experience didn't break him. It made him. Zhu Yuanzhang clawed his way through a decade of brutal warfare, outlasted every rival, and in 1368, he stood at the top. The Yuan were gone, the Ming Dynasty was born, and the beggar monk became the Hongwu Emperor. But this story is not about him. This story is about one of his sons, born into war, raised among soldiers, forged on the northern frontier, a man history would know as the Yongle Emperor, one of the greatest rulers China ever produced. And before any of that, he was a prince nobody trusted. Zhu Di was born in 1360. China was still burning. His father hadn't even won yet. Armies moved constantly. Cities changed hands through siege and slaughter. To be born into the Zhu family in 1360 wasn't a privilege. It was a gamble, and when Zhu Yuanzhang finally did win, when he finally built his dynasty, you might expect him to build something peaceful. He didn't. He built a fortress, because the Mongols hadn't disappeared. They'd been pushed north, back to the steppe beyond the Great Wall, but they were still out there, still organized, still dangerous, and Hongwu knew it. So he structured the Ming like an empire preparing for the next war, not celebrating the last one. His sons weren't pampered nobles. They were governors, commanders, shields placed at every critical point across the empire. And Zhu Di received one of the hardest assignments of all. He was named Prince of Yan and sent north to Beiping. That name will become familiar. Today we call it Beijing. But in the 1370s, Beiping wasn't a grand capital. It was a military frontier post, cold, harsh, and permanently on edge. Mongol raiding parties could strike without warning. Patrols rode out every morning not knowing if they'd return. This is where Zhu Di grew up. And here's where he becomes interesting, because most imperial princes would have resented that posting, would have lobbied to move somewhere warmer, safer, more comfortable. Zhu Di seems to have loved it. He rode horses, he hunted, he trained alongside soldiers who had spent their lives fighting. He studied military strategy not as an academic exercise, but as a survival skill. Over time, he earned something no amount of court politics could buy: the genuine loyalty of battle-hardened men. That would matter more than anyone realized. He also developed a deep understanding of the Mongols, the very enemy he was stationed to fight. Most officials in the southern capital viewed the steppe as distant and barbaric, something to be walled off and ignored. Zhu Di studied it. He understood their tactics, how they moved, how fast their cavalry could strike and disappear, how fighting them required speed and aggression, not the slow, methodical campaigns Chinese armies preferred. He respected their warfare. In some ways, he adopted it. He wasn't a scholar prince. He wasn't a ceremonial figure. He was a warrior, tall, physically imposing, radiating the kind of quiet confidence that soldiers recognize immediately. By the time he was in his 30s, Zhu Di had built something remarkable on that frozen frontier: a loyal army, veteran commanders, real military prestige, and in the paranoid world of the late Hongwu court, that made him dangerous. The Hongwu Emperor was never an easy man. The poverty, the starvation, the years of brutal warfare, they left marks that never healed. He trusted almost no one. He saw betrayal everywhere. And sometimes he was right. As he aged, his paranoia deepened into something terrifying. He launched purge after purge. Officials accused of corruption or disloyalty vanished. Entire families were executed. Ministers who had helped build the Ming Dynasty, men who had fought beside Hongwu for decades, were eliminated. The bureaucracy lived in constant fear. Blood, the emperor believed, was the only thing that could truly be trusted. And so, his sons became his pillars. Among them, Zhu Di stood out, experienced, battle-tested, possibly the most capable military mind of his generation, possibly too capable, because the heir to the throne wasn't Zhu Di, it was Zhu Biao, the eldest son, carefully educated, gentle, shaped to be a Confucian ruler in peacetime. Hongwu loved him deeply, and in 1392, Zhu Biao died. Suddenly, unexpectedly, the emperor was shattered, and everything, the entire succession, the future of the dynasty, cracked open. Many people must have assumed Zhu Di would be named heir. He was experienced, respected, the obvious military successor. But Hongwu didn't choose him. Instead, following strict Confucian tradition, he passed the throne to Zhu Yunwen, the young son of the dead crown prince, his grandson. On paper, the logic was sound. The direct bloodline had to continue. In practice, it planted a powder keg in the foundation of the dynasty because Zhu Yunwen was young, inexperienced, and surrounded by scholar officials who were deeply, viscerally afraid of the military princes, especially the Prince of Yan. To those officials, Zhu Di wasn't a loyal uncle. He was a threat with an army. They weren't entirely wrong. Hongwu himself seems to have understood the danger. Before his death in 1398, he reportedly warned Zhu Di, repeatedly, to remain loyal to the new emperor. But warnings don't diffuse ambition. Or fear. When the old emperor finally died, everything moved fast. The young Jianwen emperor took the throne. His advisors immediately pushed one agenda: neutralize the princes. One by one, the imperial uncles were dismantled, stripped of troops, demoted, arrested. Some were driven to suicide. In Beiping, Zhu Di watched it happen, and he understood exactly what he was watching. At first, he played the loyal subject, sent respectful letters, behaved cautiously, avoided anything that looked like defiance. At one point, if later accounts can be believed, he even pretended to be losing his mind. Wandering the streets in confusion, babbling incoherently, behaving erratically enough that the court's spies might report he was no longer a threat. Whether it was true or not, the detail tells you something. The situation had become so dangerous that a prince with a battle-hardened army was pretending to be insane just to survive. It didn't work for long. The arrests kept coming. Officers in his network were detained. Informants surrounded his household. Rumors reached him that the court was preparing to move directly against him. And Zhu Di had to face the calculation every cornered man eventually faces. If I surrender, I probably die anyway. If I fight, I might die. But I might win. He chose to fight. But he couldn't simply declare war on the emperor. That would make him a traitor to his father's dynasty, to his family's legacy, to everything the Ming stood for. So he found a different framing. He wasn't rebelling against the emperor, he said. He was protecting the emperor from the treacherous advisors whispering poison into the young ruler's ears. The campaign was called the Jingnan, pacifying the difficulties. It was political theater, and everyone knew it, but it was the kind of theater that gave wavering commanders an excuse to choose a side. That gave soldiers something to believe in besides naked ambition. Zhu Di raised his banner in 1399. A prince's army against an emperor's empire, north against south, warrior against scholar, and a man who had spent his entire life being underestimated. Finally, done pretending. In the next episode, the Jingnan campaign begins, outnumbered, officially declared a traitor, hunted by the full resources of the Ming Empire. The Prince of Yan will fight one of the most brutal, dramatic civil wars in Chinese history. And somehow, against all odds, he will win.